Everybody, welcome to the April 22nd, 2026 Police Community Advisory Committee meeting. Chair De La Rosa, Committee Member Gasca, and Committee Member Huerta are not here today. I'm going to be calling the meeting to order at 5 o'clock p.m. Zoom webinar participation is available for members of the public. The Zoom webinar ID and link are available on the posted agenda on the city website. If everybody will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Martha, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Committee Member Camacho?
Present.
Committee Member Alvarado?
Here.
Committee Member Hayes? Vice Chair Miller?
Present.
Thank you.
We're now open for general public comment on items that are not on the agenda and that are in the City of Salinas' subject matter jurisdiction. Comments on consideration and the consent agenda should please be held until the items are reached. Public comments are generally limited to 2 minutes per speaker, and I may further limit the time for public comments depending on the agenda schedule.
Good afternoon, Jose Guerra, Montebello Community. I want to formally invite everybody to the Crusaders Blessing of the Cars, May 16th, from 10:30. I guess it starts till 3 p.m. Rolling at 7 o'clock. There'll be food trucks, vendors, music, DJ. It is a $5 admission. I did clarify that. I was going to check if they were going to do a free admission. They said no. And almost, I believe the proceeds go to the church for their scholarship program. And trucks, bikes, motorcycles, mamalonas, which are lifted trucks, if anybody wants a translation for that. It's a lifted truck. Lowriders, hot rods, everyone is welcome. It's going to be at the Madonna del Sasso Church. And once again, that'll be May 16th, rolling at 7 a.m. And the show starts from 10 to 3 p.m. So please support your local vendors and support the Salinas Crusaders. Thank you. God bless you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Peterson. And when I get into my issues on bicycle safety and people wonder why, I point out that I've had too many friends killed and seriously injured and got one more added to that list last week. And I'd like to bring up two things. One is having ecology action do things for fifth graders doesn't cut it. We've got too many adults in Salinas who don't know the laws, and I would like to urge the chief to bring back the traffic unit because that's the best way to teach people. If you're riding on the wrong side of the street or you blow a light or something like that, bicycles can get cited too. CVC 21200 says it. The second thing is the Transportation Agency for Monterey County Pedestrian Bicycle Facilities Advisory Committee meeting next month. It's the first Wednesday of the month. It'll be in Sand City, and one of the agenda items is the new laws on e-bikes. And you might want to have somebody there if you don't have somebody who's an expert on e-bikes, because they're rampant in Salinas too, unfortunately. Thank you.
What day is that?
It is the first Wednesday next month.
May.
Yes.
Thank you. If there's anybody on Zoom that would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand through the hand raise feature and let us know. Martha, is there anybody out there on Zoom with public comment?
No public comment via Zoom.
We'll move forward with the consent agenda. The approval of minutes, March 25th, 2026. Are there any comments or questions from our committee members regarding the agenda minutes from March 25th? Hearing none, will be open to public comment on this item, either via Zoom or here and present with us. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No question via Zoom.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to move forward with consent of the minutes? Motion? Okay, I have a motion and a second. So with a motion from committee member Hayes and a second from committee member Camacho, we'll have a roll call vote. Martha, please call for the vote.
Committee Member Camacho? Yes. Committee Member Alvarado?
Yes.
Committee Member Hayes? Yes. Vice Chair Miller?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. We'll move forward to presentations. We're going to be receiving a presentation of the 2025 Salinas Police Department statistics.
Thank you. Good evening, committee members. I'll briefly really talk about a chief's report here in the front end, and then we'll go into the presentations. You probably heard a lot of information about Measure G, the funding. So we wanted just to advise the committee and people present that the next community meeting that the city is hosting on Measure G funding is next Wednesday, April 29th, and that will be at 6 p.m. at the police department on LSL. So today we have two presentations. One, as you mentioned, the 2025 crime statistics, which is a brief summary of the upcoming annual police report from the Salinas Police Department, and that will be covered by myself. And the second thing is a quick budget overview by Tanya Erickson. And it should be noted that we are going to council on May 12th to provide another presentation similar to what you're getting today on the annual report, and that'll be May 12th at council. If we could set up the presentation, please. All right, thank you. Okay, so again, a brief overview of the 2025 statistics here at the police department. Again, that incorporates a brief summary of the annual report that I hope to have published here in the next few days. That is our intention. So the calls for service, if you look at there was over 133,086 calls for service last year. Total arrests made were 2735. And if you look at the calls for service, there was an increase of just under 1%. But one thing I wanted to highlight, there was an increase in arrests and citations of almost 30%, 29.31% increase. And a slight increase in overall calls for service from 133,086 in 25 and 132,147 in 2024. A quick overview of what staffing looks like. We have 161 authorized positions. 4 of those remain frozen. So funded are 157. Vacancies include 18, including the 4 frozen. So we're at 143 sworn filled. 5 police recruits, 138 sworn officers, and then right now we're eligible to hire 14 officers. Professional and civilian staff, we have authorized 55, funded for 55. So currently have 12 vacant. 43 professional positions have been filled, and we're currently trying to hire 12 of those positions to be fully staffed on the professional, non-sworn side. Crime stats, this is obviously something that we're certainly proud of here at the police department, that Part 1 crimes, there's several categories that have decreased. Motor vehicles decreased by 16.5%. Arson decreased 34%, Larcenies, which are thefts, decreased by 19.7%. Burglaries decreased by 6.2%, rape 13.8%, and aggravated assaults by 8.6%. Two key areas that were a slight increase. We had 7 homicides in 2025 compared to 6 homicides, so that's an increase of 16.7%. And then robberies were a slight increase of 1.7% from previous year, 2024. Our investigations, again, 326 total cases assigned, 7 total homicides that I briefly mentioned. What's important out of those homicides is that we had a clearance rate of 86%. So 6 of those homicides, somebody went to jail, somebody was identified, there's a warrant request for somebody that was associated to that homicide. 189 total sex cases assigned. 163 of those were actually cleared with 81 on arrest or warrant. So our clearance rate is something that's really, really important to the community, to the department, and to the community we serve, and especially our victims. Our homicide solve rate, again, 1 homicide is too many in the city. But if you look at the charts, we're trending to 20-year lows in 2024. We had 6, 2025, we had 7. And this year, we're trending really, really low. Again, the biggest important thing here is that in the last 25 years, there's only been 4 times there's been a clearance rate of 80% or higher. So that's a good thing. So we have some sort of resolve on these incidents and these cases that are very important to our community and, of course, more importantly, our victims. Internet crimes against children, our ICAT team, we've had 105 cyber tips that we received. Out of those tips, 12 were closed, 82 reports were written, and cases were investigated, 15. So that's also, we have an ICAC team that really is working really hard on the investigative side to making sure that we're solving these cases and working every tip that we received as possible. Our Violence Suppression Task Force, our VSTF, and you have a couple of sheets in front of you that very instrumental and very engaged in, obviously, with as much as intervention we can do, but more specifically, they're on the enforcement side. With 70 felony arrests, 28 misdemeanor arrests, but more importantly, 80 guns recovered out of just over 260 that the Salinas Police Department recovered as a whole in 2025. They were responsible for 80. They were also responsible for Operation Logged Out, which is a very large scale criminal investigation that they were able to take numerous people into custody. One of the things that we're really proud of and something important that we want to highlight is our victim services and youth diversion. Right, we're victim-centric and advocacy when it comes to helping out our victims. We served 441 victims. They received and were provided services, 2,869, and 577 were referrals to outside agencies. We're happy to report that we also introduced a youth diversion program in 2025, where our first year statistics were 15 individuals, youth, completed the diversion program and successfully graduated. And right now we have 4 still left in the program. Our cadet program team is really something that we're really, really proud of. We have 35 cadets. 35 cadets. That's 35 cadets is more than 70% of the police departments have police officers in this county. So if you think about that, that's cadets that we're teaching, learning, growing within the infrastructure of the police department. They learn everything from leadership, public speaking, writing. I mean, it's really a fantastic program. They volunteered over 3,500 community hours. And as you can see, look at how many events and event hours. And some of those events are rodeo, El Grito, National Night Out, Pebble Beach, food and wine event, our PAL car show, etc. So we're also happy and excited to announce that, and I think all of you received an invitation for Friday night. We're going to really take time to acknowledge all of our cadets and their families. It's really going to be a spectacular evening tomorrow night, and that is obviously by invitation only, and I think you all received an invitation. All right, our Salinas Police Outreach Team spot, our team is we talk a lot about our community engagement efforts. Really, they're the synthesis of what gets us to all of these events, all the coordination from school and community presentations, classroom visits, participating in community events, spontaneous interaction with the youth and others. We're happy to report that in 2025, our community engagement events increased by over 700%. As you can see, in 2023, we had 3,000 community contacts. That was our reach in the community. In 2025, we hit over 25,000, 700% increase. So really something that we're proud of, to build those relationships, foster new ones, build that trust, really find a safe space for the community and our police department to engage. It's something that's really important to us, and it's been one of my top priorities. All right, I'll now leave it up to any questions that you may have regarding this information.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee on this specific presentation that we received? We'll start on the right.
Chief, I just had one question for you. The robbery statistics that you guys were going over and the slight increase that it showed, does it break down for you what types of robberies were happening? Were they car thefts? Were they break-into homes? That type of information?
Traditionally, those would be home invasions if they were broke into a home. If you broke into a vehicle, it would be a vehicle. Burglary, if they broke into a house and there was no one in there, it would be a traditional burglary. These are just robberies that were specific to robberies, a felonies taken of some personal property by force or fear near or around the individual. So it's typically centered around a victim being present.
Gotcha. And the only other thing I had to say was great job with SPOT. Obviously, 22,000 swing in participation is fantastic. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Committee Alvarado.
Thank you for the presentation. On SPOT, how is the outreach tracked? How are you counting that engagement?
So we attract that by sometimes an actual count of individuals, how many people we actually speak to. Sometimes we have sign-in sheets. I'll give you an example. There are some community events where we have surveys. There's also a point where we have a career day at a high school. I do public speaking a lot. I mean, our team goes out there a lot. We go to high schools and we sometimes just take a normal count. I'm not sure if there's any other avenues that we take. I'll have Tanya looking at, she runs and supervises that team.
So I think what Chief said is correct in that many of the things are actual counts. Those are the smaller events. I think we have worked really hard, and I think I talked about this at the last presentation, about the intentionality we have in making sure that we're not inflating those interaction numbers. That's very, very important to myself and the team. So small events, easy. We do actual counts or pretty close estimates. For large events, Sea Otter Classic, National Night Out, things like that. National Night Out's one where we generally count everybody who participates because the assumption is that everybody has an interaction with the police department staff. But an example I've given is that if you look at the air show, which can have tens of thousands of people, we generally count that somewhere between 800 and 1,000. So what we really do is at the end of every day, we try to estimate how many actual interactions we had, not just how many people attended the event, but how many communications, how many assistances, all of that. It's really important to us that we don't inflate those numbers.
Thank you. And I ask because I know there's some grants tied to some of these activities, or equipment and whatnot, or crime reduction. So when we look at the money coming in and the numbers that are reported to those grants, are those based on fiscal year or annual or calendar year?
It depends. We actually have a tracking system where we can break it down by any period of time, any category that we've done. I'm glad that you said that. This program actually started as the result of a grant. We had a CalVIP grant that actually ends in June So we're actually getting ready to do some evaluation work. We've contracted with the health department to do an evaluation, and we'll be doing some posts on social media saying, have you attended an event? Did you have an interaction? Did that have a positive thing? So those counts, the authenticity of those counts, and pre-post surveys and things like that. Right now, we're about to enter focus group time on their various activities. So we try to be really both intentional and meaningful in the feedback and
Yeah.
numbers that we get.
And that's why it's so important for the community to participate and engage on those surveys and that feedback as much as possible. Just to clarify, the numbers that are reported, those are calendar years though, right? Like the
Those are
crime
calendar years,
statistics.
correct. Those are
Perfect.
calendar. We've done different ones by fiscal year,
Yeah.
but for us, it's been easiest because we align it with our annual report.
Correct. Thank you. Are there some hot months, like is a busy season for some of those?
I think so, yes, absolutely, during the summer. We start to really focus on El Rodeo in July, but before that, we have some after-school activities. We have National Night, Rodeo in July, National Night Out in August. And I think during the school year, there's really, where we're really busy, we're often called a lot. We're trying to be intentional to go at every high school that really invites us and wants us there for a career day, anti-bullying presentations. I go and speak to Las Madres in Spanish. I mean, you just don't know. I think we're kind of busy all the time, but certainly during the school year in the summertime. And that's also an opportunity for us to really engage with the young adults, to introduce them to the profession, introduce them to all of the level of positions that don't require for you to be hired by the Salinas Police Department in a sworn capacity. I mean, so whether it's a dispatch, forensic analyst, criminalist, investigative specialist, every opportunity that we have to engage with our community really defines us as an organization. So, and it's really a good opportunity for us to talk about the profession. I mean, we can get questions related to how do I register a vehicle? My cousin's here from out of town, out of college. Couldn't they do a ride along? And so forth and so on. So I think we're busy most of the year.
Well, I echo your praise on the cadet program because I have seen that grow. So good job.
Thank you.
And I hope it keeps growing because that's great pipeline of future officers for sure. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Camacho.
Thank you. Member Hayes, do you have any questions or comments?
Of the homicides, 86% is 86% is very impressive to get that cleaned up. It's very, we should, like you said, one is way too many. So thank you for an excellent police force. Now, you said there was 6 in 2024 and 7 in 2025, and 6 were actually solved. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
So we still have 7. Are some of those old case files, or is
In
there a mixture in there?
2025 or 2024?
For both years.
No, there were actual cases that happened in that calendar year.
Okay.
Now, there are often times that we are working with our partners in the county, with the district attorney's office and the Monterey County cold case team. And we've been really blessed and fortunate to actually have a cold case investigator join our investigative team. So yes, it's not uncommon for us to go back and look at other cases and try and solve those too. But that would be in a different year of that solve rate.
Okay. And all the calls that you get in, has that been pretty much stable since you've been here? The calls that are coming in for reporting crimes?
I mean, I could look at the data. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been here a year and a half. And
I know.
if you look, it was 132, I believe, in 2024, 133 in 2025. Historically, I think the trajectories that we get more calls for service, the demands for the police department and the expectations seem to increase. And I think when you build strong relationships with the community you serve, I think that allows people and gives them the opportunity to call the police. You know, oftentimes we're told, we don't want to bother you. We know you're understaffed. I know you have higher priorities. And my response to them is, no, please call the police. You know, we do a lot of presentations at schools, and we sort of talk about what is the information. And you guys had a great presentation from dispatch not too long ago, but what are the parameters, what are the things they look at. So we often do more education and outreach on the things that the dispatcher is going to be asking. So, because we want to encourage people to call the police. Because I always say, my officers are not at a call every moment of their shift. And it might be that time where they do call and they're right there. They're near Carr Lake. They're on Baranda. They're on Main. Something is happening and we can kind of have a response time there.
Now, those calls that come in, are they all reported? Are they all logged in when they come in? Or are some just miscellaneous calls doesn't really, you have to go out there or do any service? Do they all get logged in?
Yes, most of the calls that we get are through our 911 dispatch. Now, there are times when officers initiate a call, or they receive an information or direction that somebody is calling at a school. They didn't call 911. They seem to reach our watch commander's office or contacted an on-duty sergeant. That on-duty sergeant or that watch commander will call dispatch themselves, or the officers will, through their radio, and initiate a call so that it is memorialized in the CAD system, and we can take account for that call.
Is there any way we can get some of these calls by district as to where is the most dangerous area and where you get the most calls?
That information will be really in detail in our annual report, and I believe we may have some of that information on our website.
Okay.
But if that's something that we could look at doing, we could probably potentially look at district, what those calls look like per district.
Yeah, because I've been, not that I have nothing to do, but I've been looking at Nextdoor and all the crimes that are reported, and it's just neighbors notifying each other. And I've often told them, you need to do a police report. You need to call the police. And I was looking in there to see how many calls had come in from my district, and I know there's a lot more than what was recorded. So I'm just wondering, are we not calling enough? Because we have break-ins frequently. We have stolen items frequently. We have fighting in the creek regularly. So are they not calling in, or what can we do to encourage them to call in to make sure that that gets noted in the call log? Because if you get that call, it tells the city and us, we need more help. We need more police. This is what's happening in Salinas. And if we're just talking amongst us, oh, I'm going to write to Montebella and tell him, that this happened. He's not going to report it to the police department. That's not his job.
I think you do exactly what you're doing. Encourage your neighbors through Nextdoor, through your community meetings, through your outreach, and really let them know that it is very important to call. Because even if it doesn't rise to the level of a police report, even if the police officers don't find the person involved, that information is memorialized in a CAD system. That information is looked into at a later time. That's how we establish patterns, trends, potentially the same MO that this individual had. Later, we discover that a similar type incident occurred in the different part of town, and we can kind of coordinate that data, that surveillance, that investigation, that information. Absolutely. Continue to reach out to your community every opportunity you can. We want them to call it in and memorialize that. Again, if it doesn't rise to the level where a police response is needed, maybe it was for situational awareness, maybe you saw a suspicious vehicle that there was no other furtherance of this vehicle or situation, at least that information is memorialized in the CAD system, and it's somewhere in the police, because that's what the dispatchers do. That's how they get that information and send it to the officers.
Now, are some of those calls that come in, do they include accidents, people under DUI, or drugs, or firearms? Are they included in that report?
Without looking at every one of those calls, of
Right.
133,000,
Right.
my assumption is absolutely there is.
Why not? No.
Yes, we are getting calls, and they range from shooting, distracted drivers, we think somebody's DUI.
Okay.
I mean, they range from all over the spectrum, but yes, absolutely. Without even looking at 133,000 calls, I can assure you that some of them are DUIs. They are
Okay.
accidents, they are suspicious behavior.
Okay, yeah, we could get more detailed, and especially the districts. I'd like to know, how we're doing compared to other districts, and when we need to do more and encourage people to call in and make sure that gets recorded. I think those are all the questions that I have. Thank you. Excellent presentation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Hayes.
Thank you. Martha, do we have any questions or comments on Zoom?
No comments or questions via Zoom.
Okay. There was a significant increase in citations and arrests that were noted, and I'm just curious as to the key contributing factors to that increase.
The key what?
Contributing factors, like what contributed to the increase in the arrests and citations? Was it more calls? Was it more ability to respond based on the way you're prioritizing calls? Everything?
Everything, right? I can tell you that in 2025, I added another full-time police officer to our motor unit. Somebody made a statement in public comment earlier that they want to bring back the traffic unit. I believe we used to have 8 full-time traffic motorcycle officers. When I got here, we had 1. So we were able to add one full-time, and that's based on staffing. Everything's predicated on staffing. That had a little bit to do with, we also, with an O2S grant, we were able to bring in collateral officers to go and do enforcement, intervention, outreach, and education. And so we utilize them, and at times we have 6 to 8 motorcycle officers out there doing enforcement and education and outreach. Not everything is a citation. And then our investigative teams have done an incredible job. Our patrol officers are taking more guns off the streets now than ever. That usually results in an arrest or citation.
Can I just, I don't want to be a hog, but I have a couple more.
As long as it pertains to this presentation.
Mhm. Well, the next presentation is about budget, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so if we need to ask something, ask it now that has to do with you. The
Yes.
police department. I understand during Easter, there was a lot of issues with parks, Natividad Creek Park, Hardin Park, and Toro Park, but Toro Park's county. But the other 2 are in the city. One, you assisted the San Jose Police in an event. Is that correct, or was that just a rumor that spread?
We
That there
assist, it was a busy day, a
Okay.
busy weekend. But there are often times where there's a criminal element that comes to this city that's initiated somewhere else. We help out other agencies as it reflects current ongoing investigations.
So that wouldn't be reported in our call log if you assist?
It would be recorded as
It
a
would.
mutual aid or assist.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Natividad Creek Park, because I wanted to find out, because I had several people that were asking me, what happened? I don't know. I don't know what happened.
I don't
Oh,
specifically, I know that we were very, very busy that day, but just
Okay.
general calls for service.
Okay.
Typically, when we have holidays, I mean, there is an increase, more people out, more people at parks, et cetera.
And again, I'd like to make a recommendation in regards to speeding, racing. I've noticed at Safeway lately, I mean, they are going awfully fast. And pedestrians know they have the right of way, and they'll still get behind a car. Is there any way to change that law? And maybe that's for something in the future, but they need to be aware, just as aware as the driver does, because they know the car's moving and they still get behind you. Is there something we can do?
I appreciate the recommendation. I just kind of want to stick to the information and the report and the statistics we're talking about, but certainly pedestrian and vehicle safety is one of our top priorities. As mentioned earlier, the more enforcement we're trying to go out there, it's predicated on resources. And right now, our hope is to expand that team. Our hope is to make sure that our officers have that free patrol time to go out there and do that. Again, I encourage people to call.
So I could just send you an email if we have any suggestions like that, rather than take up time.
I would
here.
not send it in an email, no, because if that's a recommendation that you have, we're certainly taking into consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very good presentation.
Thank you, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations on your clearance rates. We appreciate the
Thank
work
you.
that you're doing. We will now receive the budget review, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll now turn it over to Tanya Erickson, who will give you a budget overview.
Martha a minute to pull it up. So we are in the middle of budget season, and so we thought it was a good opportunity to just provide you an overview of the police department budget, a little bit about what the process looks like for us. And so we will. So as Martha finds that, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Tanya Erickson. I'm the Police Service Administrator, so kind of anything money, budget, facilities, fleet, infrastructure kind of stuff generally goes through my team. I've been here for just under 7 years. I've been managing the budget for about 6, so we'll do the best to provide you an overview of what we have. Whoops, wrong one. That's Chief's. Okay, I tried. That's okay. So one of the things I'll talk about as we get started, the numbers that are referenced in here are our general funds. So you may hear about, often the term general funds are those funds that the city has discretion over how to spend. So general funds are made up of the traditional general fund. It's also Measure E, which is a tax measure, and Measure G, which is a tax measure. When we look for comparisons of budgets year over year, we found that the easiest thing to do is use the general funds as that comparator. The reason why is that we may get grants on occasion, we may get other things, and when you throw those in, the numbers start looking very different. And ultimately, the city has no discretion over how to spend those. We apply for a grant, we say this is what we're going to do, and that's what we have to do. And so that's actually the reason why this will just reflect the general funds. We do have some additional grant opportunities. We do regularly apply for grants. We do have several grants. In general, our grants will supply equipment. It's pretty rare for us to go after a grant that actually funds staff, but we actually have done that a bit in the last 5 years. We've been very successful. Grants have actually started our victim advocate program, which was then sustained by the city. Currently, I mentioned the SPOT team, the Community Outreach and Engagement Youth Services Division, was started with a grant and now is funded by the city. And one of our grants we're managing now is our organized retail theft grant, and that's funded. Those positions are funded. That will end in a year and a half, and then we'll hope to make them as part of our general program. None of those are considered when we talk about the numbers that we have here today. So a couple of things about those general funds I mentioned. Every year, so that you know, all of this information is from publicly available sources. If you go to our website and pull up the historic adopted budget documents, that's where all of these figures are from. So first of all, this shows the general funds operating budgets for the city, and I've highlighted the police there. So for the current fiscal year 25-26, the total city budget's $184 million is what was adopted last June, and the police department budget is $64 million of that. When it compared to 24-25, we did see a 6.5% increase in our budget from last year. Little bit more about the police department. So again, our 25-26 general fund budget is $64,431,730. That's what was approved in June of last year for this. There can be amendments through the year. We just went through mid-year and there were some slight amendments there, but we generally, for comparative purposes, look at what was approved as part of the adopted budget in June. As part of our budget, we have 161 sworn positions, but only 157 of them are funded. 4 of those positions are left in what's called frozen status, which means they're technically on the books, but they're not funded, so we can't touch them. We also have 55 professional positions, and those are our civilian positions. It can be everything from community service officers to myself and the finance team, the outreach team. So a little bit about the history of the adopted police department budgets is there's often a look at what percentage of the city's budget the police department makes up. And so this actually shows a comparator over the last 6 years. Starting back in fiscal year 2021, the police department was about 45.1% of the city's overall general funds budget. Currently in 25-26, we're 35% of the city's overall general budget. And that's to say that as the city has grown, the city has chosen where to invest those funds. There's also been some shifting of funds over time. But it does show that we are a smaller proportion of the city's budget than we have historically been. So when we talk about general funds, the 2 that you often hear about are Measure E and Measure G, because those have the oversight committees. And we often get asked, what is funded by Measure E? What's funded by Measure G? So we thought we'd give you an overview of this. So first of all, in Measure E, we have 31 positions that are funded out of Measure E. 8 are sworn and 23 are civilians. One of the things as we go into this to share with you is a couple of years ago, we really worked to try to have as much as possible whole programs funded within certain funds, in large part because it's easier for us to manage, to know all of these are going to be in the Measure E, and then as we have to shift within that. And so these are the units that are funded there. The first is our personnel and training unit. That's our unit that makes sure that that does all of our hiring processes, that makes sure that all of our candidates get background checks. They make sure that we're getting the required training and the optional training that are required. And that consists of 1 police commander, 1 police sergeant, a police officer that is vacant. As Chief said in his presentation, staffing, it's completely dependent upon resources. So at this point, that position is vacant because we really need that position in patrol on the streets. So we're always having to make those decisions, and that leads often to what's vacant. We have a community service officer, and we have a public safety information officer. That's currently vacant because it was just approved in this current fiscal year. We also have support services. Support services is really, we try to put, those are things that everybody supports everybody. One of them is a police sergeant. That's actually for our internal affairs or professional standards unit. We have a crime analyst that helps do data analytics and crime analyst stuff. We have a criminalist and 2 forensic specialists that work in our crime lab that benefits patrol, investigations, everyone. We also have a community service officer and 3 community service aides, and those are positions that help support our front desk, our online reports, things like that. So again, those are all support services. We have 2 vacant community service aides in that group. Our property and evidence is also funded by Measure E. So that has 1 police sergeant that oversees that unit. He actually oversees evidence and also the crime lab area. We have 1 property and evidence supervisor, and we have 2 evidence techs, of which 1 position is currently vacant. We also have special operations. So historically, special operations was special events, and it also had some community relations aspect, which it still kind of does. So even though the SPOT team is under me, admin is not really the place they belong. So they're really part of the special operations division from a functional perspective. So there are 2 police sergeants, of which 1 is vacant. We have a half-time admin analyst and a half-time community outreach assistant. To clarify, those are actually full-time positions. They are those positions I mentioned that are part of the outreach team. They were funded by the grant through December 31st of 2025. So they're only listed as a half-time because the city started funding them as of January 1st. So they really are full-time positions, but that's what reflects on our budget. We also have our field operations, our patrol. We actually have all of our community service officers that work on the patrol function are within our Measure E. And then we also have animal services, which is getting ready to go away. As if you remember, long ago, animal services was under the police department. Several years ago, we contracted that to the county, but 1 position remained for a couple of years. And so we kept some of the facility costs, and we kept that position. We are just in the process right now of converting that position because it's a very specialized animal services office assistant. Can't really use that. We've converted that to an office technician that'll actually help our personnel and training program and then allow that community service officer to go out on patrol and help our officers on the streets. So that's in the process of being converted. So Measure G funding, that's something that we're hearing a lot about right now. We actually gave a handout to all of you on the dais to show a little bit about what Measure G does for us. That funds 4 units, and it funds all of 3 of those and part of the other. The first is the traffic unit. So as we were talking about the traffic here, we have 1 police sergeant that's currently vacant. It doesn't mean we don't have a sergeant. It means we have a patrol sergeant who's doing traffic duties as a collateral assignment, basically on overtime, because we can't dedicate him to that full-time. We have 2 police officers, and then we also have collateral traffic officers, and those are generally patrol officers who on an overtime basis are going out and doing traffic enforcement. So that's our entire traffic unit is funded by Measure G. The other unit that's fully funded by Measure G is our Violent Suppression Task Force. We have 1 commander, 2 police sergeants, 6 police officers, and a crime analyst that are part of our VSTF unit. We also have records. Our entire records unit is covered under Measure G. We currently have a records coordinator. We have 3 supervising police services techs, of which 1 is vacant. And we have 9 police service technicians, and of those 4 are vacant right now. And then finally, we have police administration. So we have part of our police administration. Chief and and our management analyst are actually funded out of general fund, but Measure G funds our 2 administrative secretaries and our Martha's raising her hand, and our administrative analysts are funded out of Measure G. So one thing that I do want to say is, as you know, there's a lot of publicity or a lot of information going out of Measure G right now. So the next Measure G meeting is actually being held next week on the 29th at 6 o'clock, and it's actually at the police department. So if you want to learn more about Measure G, there's a community meeting next week. So I want to just very briefly about what's the actual budget process look like. The city is actually in the process right now of converting to a 2-year budget cycle. As the city manager has conveyed, the intent is to try to do more long-range planning for the budget. And so in January, we had to submit our position requests and our other budget requests for both fiscal years, for both the upcoming year, 26-27, starting July 1st, and the following year, July 1st, 2027. So that is something new to us. We have been, it's been communicated that the intent is to do kind of a mid-year now, just like we do now. Now we do a mid-year like in December for the current year. Now it would be kind of halfway through a mid-year and say, okay, you know, a year ago we said this is what we thought we would need for next year, but now actually it turns out that it's different. So there still will be regular reviews of these as we move forward. So we're not, I don't want to say we're not locked in, because we really had to clarify what we expected to need. But especially in areas like public safety, things may change significantly within a year. So there will be opportunities for us to revisit those conversations. So as I said, those included new position requests, and we did request some new positions. And then there were additional budget requests, which included overtime, contract services, some training, and some software. And I can go into more detail if you're interested in those. So what happens now, we turned those in January. The city manager and our city finance are currently looking at all of the requests from all of the departments, deciding what it is, those requests versus the available funding, and making the decisions as to what's going to be funded, or making what's going to be their recommendation. That recommendation will go to city council as in a budget study session in May. I believe that date is currently May 19th is the scheduled date that buddy, and that will happen here at the Rotunda with city council. That's a chance for them to review the budget recommendations, make any questions, ask any questions, make any other recommendations. That will happen in May. Generally, then there's some time afterwards where the city takes that feedback and then reworks the budget, and then it'll come back in June. And currently it's scheduled for mid-June to come back for approval. Once we have that, then we're set and we can move forward with our operations going forward. So there's a lot of stuff that happens with us from a budget perspective. In particular, we usually start about December. We're starting to look at mid-year, then we're looking at the new budget requests, then we're talking to the city manager's office and our city finance department frequently about what that request is, explaining it, looking at our current expenditures to see if there's a justification for what we've requested. So we're currently in that process right now. And that is it. So I just wanted to, I know it's a very high-level overview, but because we know it's going to be so much of the conversations during this time, we wanted to have an opportunity. So I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Tanya. Do we have any committee member questions or comments that relate specifically to the budget overview presentation?
I will start, sorry. You'd mentioned that the SPOT program was started on a grant.
Yes.
Can you tell us the date that that grant started?
Yes, it started July 1st of 2022.
And the
It
sunset?
actually it took us about a year to actually get it started. It ended, well, it was originally supposed to end on June 30th of 2025. It got extended to December 31st of 2025, and then was extended to June 30th of 2026. So it's been extended several times.
Okay.
We had already put into the budget to have our staff convert to permanent status as of January 1st, and we continued with that requirement, in part because that grant had a match requirement. So for every dollar the grant gave us, we had to demonstrate a contribution of $1 on the city. And so we transitioned them over, and this last 6 months, they're serving as match towards the grant funds that we've received.
What did you start off with the grant? How much was it?
So it's actually not our grant. So it's actually a grant that was done out of the Library and Community Services Division and still is managed. We just have the largest component. They also have non-government organizations that are receiving services, Natividad Foundation, Partners for Peace. So there's some Rancho Cielo. So I believe the total grant was about $3 million, of which our portion was just over $1 million.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I think at highest, because we've done some modifications to reallocate because of our late start, I think the highest it ever was about $1.3 million was the police department's piece.
Okay. And then the plan is to move that into being funded by the general fund once it sunsets?
That was actually approved the current 25-26 budget year. So it was officially adopted as permanently funded position and programming as of this current fiscal year.
Then could you give us a little more information? You said that during the fiscal year that you had to amend the budget a couple of times. Can you be a little more specific as to what those amendments were?
When I say amendments, so there's a couple of different things that happen. Number one, we may have to transfer money between funds. So what may be approved, we may have to move it from personnel and training to patrol, or from patrol to personnel and training. So the individual line items may change during the year, but the overall total does not change. But
stays
at
within the department.
mid-year, it may, and at this time at mid-year, we did ask for some augmentations at mid-year to cover some shortfalls. We had asked for some overtime for our traffic unit. As Chief had mentioned, and I mentioned here, we have collateral officers. Those didn't actually get onboarded and trained until like the beginning of this year, so we hadn't anticipated for those officers originally as part of this budget. So we were really looking at some of those where we thought there would be some overages. So mid-year is always meant to be just a minor adjustment.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for your
You're welcome.
clarification. I'm so glad you guys did this with Measure G, because when we found out the sunset was happening, this was over a year ago. The folks on Measure E were asking, so break this down for us. How many of these services are going to be allocated, and what are we possibly going to lose if it doesn't pass? So I'm glad you guys were able to pull the how much we would possibly lose if Measure G doesn't go through. Great presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So from 2024 to 2025, it was an increase in the budget of about shy of $4 million.
Correct.
6.5% increase year over year. Do we know of that shy of $4 million, did it come from the general fund, Measure E, or Measure G?
So not an easy answer for us. So I think the best thing to communicate is that I think the city and we as well tend to look at all of the general funds together, because ultimately it's sometimes hard. You may have a variance within general fund or Measure E or Measure G that you don't anticipate based upon the costs of a specific unit or what happens and what the requests are. So over the years, finance has sometimes had to shift programs from one to the other based upon what available funds are. So for example, if a unit collapses, no longer exists, then there may be available funds in one fund balance, and so they shift costs over there. So it's not easy to see what the difference is. I mean, we could certainly look and say this is what it is, but it's hard to, it's not an apples to apples comparison, because the bodies who lived in it one year may be different than the bodies who lived in it. I think that's especially important for the police department. Not only may the divisions or the costs change, but in our case, the officers change. We go through what's called shift change every year. Our officers rotate assignments. And as you can imagine, there's very different costs for officers. If you have an officer who's been here for 20 years and has, master officer certifications and educations, he may make a lot more than a new officer. So as those shift, it also adjusts where the budget needs to be based upon the bodies that are physically are staffed in each unit.
And the reason I ask is 4 million is not pocket change, and so Measure E, Measure G funds more things outside of the police department. So if we're taking from one bucket to fill another, then it's just more, a general question. Of the 161 positions, sworn officers, correct?
Yes.
4 are frozen.
Yes.
Those 4 frozen, are any of those that are frozen the ones that are showed vacant currently?
No, all of our frozen positions are in the general fund.
Okay, good. So of the ones that are shown for Measure E and Measure G that are vacant, what happens if they stay vacant during the fiscal year? What happens to that money?
So I think what happens with both general fund Measure E and Measure G, but in particular Measure E and Measure G, if there is an underspend, then that's redeposited to the fund balance for Measure E or Measure G. It's not like it goes into the city's general coffers. It has to stay within Measure E or Measure G, and thus is available for reallocation the following year. Not
Reallocation.
specifically to us,
Okay,
but to the
perfect.
general city fund balance to decide where the city needs are.
Okay. And is there like a time frame, like say fiscal year ends and that position hasn't been filled 2 months before, to hire someone, to train them, or just the hiring process takes longer than 2 months? Is there a time frame where that is decided, whether to reallocate those funds?
So what I would say is that generally those reallocations happen after the fiscal year has closed and the savings are done. I think that's something that our finance department does. When the fiscal year closes, they look to see what's the general fund balance, Measure E, Measure G, and general funds. And so it doesn't happen in time for right now. For example, we won't know how much savings they're trying to estimate. That's a very important part of our finance department, is they're trying to estimate where we are based upon our current expenditures. But they ultimately won't know until the city closes out the books, which can happen anywhere from October to January. And so that is fund that's often available for some of the mid-year requests. And then ultimately it's utilized the next year for reallocation for the next fiscal year budget.
So when there's changes from one position to the, I think you said, if there's like, changes need to be made between positions or departments or wherever the funds are coming from. Is there oversight from city council on those changes, those budget line changes, or is that at the discretion of the department itself?
So I think, I want to make sure I'm answering your question. So I think there's a couple of different things. In general, the city council adopts the budget, which has maximum appropriations. Our maximum appropriation would be within our department. We have discretion with support and oversight of the finance department to shift within as long as we don't exceed the total appropriation that the city has given us. If there needs to be a transition from a fund to a fund, that's something that has to be approved by city council. Okay. So there's a level of ability for us to shift based upon operational needs. And then there's a level where at the end of the year, there may be a cleanup where Measure E went over and Measure G went under, and we have to figure out how to do that. That's something that ultimately goes to city council through the mid-year budget process, part of the fiscal year budget process.
Yeah, good. I know the bureaucratic process might delay some needs, and if it's like you need it now, it should be readily
We do.
available.
I think that you'll see, we go to city council, and generally the police department does not do it. The only time that we'll go to city council is if it exceeds a purchasing threshold or we need them to allocate us more money. I think the police department is really good at finding funds within our existing budget to make sure that we're covering it. So an example would be this year we had an unexpected cost, and so we're just shorting another area, and which we can do for a year maybe, but we can't do it this year. And part of our budget hearing was, well, but you did it this year, why can't you do it next year? And so those are the conversations we have with city finance and city manager to say, we might be able to delay some gear purchases for a year. We can push them off. It doesn't mean that we can push them off indefinitely. So we're very lucky to have that flexibility and the support of our finance department and our city manager to do those.
In that position, I forget which page it was, for the animal services position, so that is ending. That money is going to be for an office tech, I
Right.
think you mentioned. So, because the JPA has been in existence for a while.
Correct.
What has that position been doing as far as animal services?
That position was an extended absence. And so we kept it, it had to stay on the books. That position is now retired. And so it was the one kind of legacy that held over when, because I was involved with when we transitioned to the JPA. When the JPA was put in place, all services were contracted to the city. So had that position returned, we would have had to have found another position within the city because we had already contracted with the county to have provided all those services.
So the city shares costs through the JPA with the county. Why wouldn't that budget item or that position be part of that contribution? Why would it stay within the department?
It's just one of those things that held on there with us because all of the positions and functions were already transitioned. The costs for those positions were transitioned as part of the JPA process. So it was just a legacy that got held over for a couple of years. And the JPA, the animal services, is no longer in our budget. It's overseen by the city manager's
Right.
office. That was one of the things, we managed it for, I think, a year and a half because I was on that board. And then at some point, it doesn't make sense for the police because when you leave it under police, there's a perception that we are responsible for animal services. So it was important for us to take that out of the police department and say, this is a contract services that's under the oversight of the city.
Okay. Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on Zoom?
No questions or comments via Zoom.
Okay, we received a brief chief's report in advance of the presentation on statistics. Did you have anything else to add to that, Chief Acosta? Okay, great. So we'll sum things up with our committee member reports.
I'm sorry, we're missing a public questions?
Oh, sorry, just cutting you right off. Only Zoom. I apologize.
That's the second time, Ms. Miller. Good afternoon, Segura Montebello community. It is very important for people to attend this Measure E and Measure G meeting. Our city does have to function, it does have to work, and we must allocate these funds in the right area. We must have the trust from the city to make sure they do it right, and all our departments get the proper funding. The last thing we want to do is be unfunded in an area, especially fire, police, infrastructure, things that are important to us, that need to be done. I don't believe Parks and Recs is a very important area where a lot of the money goes. We have other areas that we actually need better for funding. Police department, fire, infrastructure, streetlights, streets, sidewalks, ADA, sidewalk, improvements, things like that, in my opinion, but we don't have enough people. I mean, look, nobody's here. There should be more people here that should be involved and be ready to help. Be ready to understand where your money goes. That's the most important thing to do. And you know what? I approve this. I want the police department to get their money. They need their money. We need to be safe. And thank you, Chief Acosta. You and your officers and your commanders have done a great job, especially in Montebello. You guys are always welcome in my neighborhood, always. Come on by and announce. We're good with that. Thank you. We appreciate that because there's a lot of crime there where people are scared to report it. And they're scared to say anything. It's all over the internet. You're right, Ms. Hayes. It's all over next door. I've seen it where they report this. I advise them, please make a police report. That way the police are informed and we can have things done the correct way. Okay, well, thank you guys. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments, and I sincerely apologize for passing that.
My name is Eric Peterson, You heard several references to some positions being frozen. There have been a number of misrepresentations, I get surgery on Friday, misrepresentations of what happened by some politicians in Prunedale and elsewhere. Those positions, when they were frozen, it wasn't the current council, it was the previous council. The deal was, with the consent of the police department, those positions would be frozen, and if they could ever be filled, they would be put back into the budget. They were not police defunding, which is the term being used by certain Prunedalians. And it was a budget gimmick, plain and simple. And those 4 positions balanced the budget. And one other thing, you've heard a lot about Measure G. I was on the committee, so if anybody has any questions, there have been misrepresentations of that too. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on our committees. Do we have any additional comments or questions regarding the presentation? Okay. So committee member reports will receive communication from our committee members and reports.
I have nothing to report. Thank you guys for your presentation. Great information. Thank you.
I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Measure E and Measure G, I see a lot of, what I see is waste and duplication of funds, of projects, and I'm just like, no, maybe we should get the receiver to come in and do a report on the books and find out where all the money's going. My priorities, of course, would be fire, police, code enforcement, and those that don't have a voice, like our animal services. There's a lot of things that need to be looked at, and like I said, I've seen a lot of waste and abuse, and that's our taxpayer money. So everybody has a choice to make the decision on how they're going to vote on this measure. But at this point right now, I'm just very concerned with our city and the way things are being spent and prioritized. I agree with Jose in regards to parks and recreation, 50-plus parks, and most of them are already unattended to. Where we need the money is fire and police. We need those people that maybe positions are frozen. We need to fund the police because we're never going to get people to come into Salinas unless we have a safe city. And we might try and make it look pretty, but that's just what we want to do. All the encampments that we have, they're all being pushed out of the central area so they're not viewed. So that's why I didn't even want to comment on Measure E and Measure G. I hope they pass, but there needs to be changes the way they do business. So I don't want to lose any positions, especially in those 3 areas. And if it's something that they're going to say, oh, we either fund those positions or we don't, or they're gone. And that's kind of threatening to me because we need those positions. So those are my only comments, except for one last thing. The Salinas Police Department sent out a thank you to Stephanie and Martha, and of course also Tanya. You all do a fantastic job for the city, for the Salinas Police Department, and I know you're adored and respected, just like we adore and respect you too, so I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Our next meeting will be May 27th, 2026, and I will adjourn this meeting at 6:09 p.m.